I played yet another kid. This is the 5th round in a row that I play a kid who is under the age of 14 years old. In this Sicilian, I am playing actually somebody from Canada, my homeland out here in Iceland, who is 2300 rating. And after d6, I go d4, takes. It is a Sicilian defense, and after knight f6, knight c3, a6, this marks the beginning of the Najdorf variation. The most common, the most popular, the most played, and certainly the toughest Sicilian of them all against my white pieces. Now I had some special prep prepared, so I go f3, my typical, e5, knight b3, fold the knight back, and now bishop e6. And here, as you saw in previous times, actually before f3, after a6, in my last tournament, we went with the freak attack, a very special surprise. But here my prep was more down and under. So after bishop e7, I go queen d2, and now h5 is played. And it's more hidden. This time, I go with bishop e2, something I have never played in my online blitz games before. Bishop e2 is a waiting move to prolong the castling move that I've ever done in this h5 variation. And this is quite interesting. I mean, there's a symmetry on the board. The bishops are just facing each other on the same file. It's actually a completely symmetrical file, which is actually mind-blowing. I haven't thought of that before. That's beautiful. The beauty of chess, ladies and gentlemen. So after bishop e2, it's a waiting move. My opponent goes knight bd7, develops their piece, and now I go with knight d5. And this was prep. I have prepped this line. I know the lines here. There are 2 options for black, takes, and really a third one with castles. But if you castle, this h5 pawn is going to get weak. So knight takes. Bishop takes is a bit the better move. It's counterintuitive. You are giving your bishop pair. But my opponent usually has the tendency to take with the knight, which is a little less good, and played that in the game, which I was pleased with because I anticipated that with e takes, bishop f5, and now I castle short. That's right, I'm castling short on this kind of mediocre king side, and with this pawn kind of switching down the file there. Castles back on the 13th move, and now I go with knight a5. I've never castled short in an OTB game against a Najdorf. I've always castled long and attacked the king, but this is different. This is deep preparation against a strong player, and if I win, this is the biggest win of my chess career since coming back to chess, so it's huge. Knight a5 attacking this b7 pawn, and here queen c7 is the normal move to defend, and now I go with c4. And here the plans are very straightforward for the white pieces. They're actually very beautiful. I plan to go b4, rook ac1, and then rook a d1. And the only object of the position is to thrust that c5 move, breaking open the position and fracturing this pawn structure here. Beautiful c4 move. And there's not much you can do. If you try to kick my knight with b6, I go knight c6, a very typical, very strong Najdorf knight on c6 there that you don't want to let in. My opponent goes with h4, a very interesting take to just try to ram in my king side that is already a bit smoked. I go with b4, just going straight for my plans, and now my opponent surprises me with a very counterintuitive anti-positional move. Knight b8. And I paused for a second. I was like, what does this do and why is he playing it? And once you get into the psychology of why black is playing it, you kind of understand that black wants to go with b6 to kick my knight, and the knight on b8 serves as a protector of the c6 square, so my knight never enters the c6 square. But this knight is a undeveloping move. Black is virtually de-developing their knight, putting it back to the original square. So I convinced myself. I told myself there has to be something here. And I've been practicing positional chess and positional maneuvering for quite some time now, very intensely, from a book and from a video course. And after knight b8, I was fortunate to find a very interesting combination. And that is the move c5, sacrificing a pawn. It's very pretty. It's very cute. If you don't do anything, c5 is on the board, and it's just a very strong move. I'll go like with rook ac1, and I'll take here. So black is pretty much planning to take here on c5, and then I go with knight c4, threatening d6 with a fork on knight and bishop. on queen and bishop, pardon. First of all, you don't have time to kick my knight with b5 because I have d6 attacking your queen. And after bishop takes, queen takes d6. And here you still don't have time to take my knight. The queen has to move, and then I can even like take here, or even the engine says bishop takes c5 and attacking the rook, completely crushing. So what does black do? Well, black has several options. If you defend here, the pawn move, well, then I can just take your bishop, and I can play bishop takes c5 with the skewer on queen and rook. Not possible as well. If you defend this, I had a very, very nice line against this. Here, d6 is in full control by the black pieces, but I turn up the heat with rook fd1 as well, threatening d6 here. Now that you play b5 attacking my knight, I still have d6 even though my queen is pinned. If you go anywhere else with your queen, I can have d takes e7, rook takes, and then a queen here. So black will play the smart move, queen c6, taking up the e8 promotional square. And then I had pawn takes bishop, sacrificing a queen, rook takes. I can't queen now because the queen takes up e8, but I have rook takes d2. And I'm going for compensation in material form. Here I'm threatening rook d8 check and then queening. So black has to play knight d7, blocking that file. But now I have this crazy move. My knight has been hanging for 3 moves, and it goes knight d6, threatening this promotion and threatening the bishop. And I will win another rook. And here I have 2 rooks and a bishop for the queen, and it's completely, well, it's not completely winning. Black has some counterplay, but it's advantageous for white. It's winning. So this wasn't possible. I saw this all the way back here. Knight c4 is played. My opponent non-verbally is like this and is looking unconfident and plays the move bishop f6. Bishop f6 gives up on the fact, admits to me that I have a positional edge in this position. Here, I have options. B takes c5. I'm crushing with 2 pawns that are in the center, and this is a passed d5 pawn. d6 first, attacking the queen, very strong, and then I can take with the bishop. What I played was bishop takes c5, and my argument is that I'm winning an exchange, simply put. The rook has no safe squares on this bottom rank to survive. Rook here, I have knight b6, and I'm forking 2 rooks. And now it's not my bishop that's given up, it's my knight. Rook here, I have bishop b6, skewer on queen and rook, and rook here, I have knight d6 with another fork. I mean, it's tactics galore here, it's tactics city. So my opponent leaves their rook on f8, and I just trade, and now I'm just up a full exchange against somebody who's almost 300 points up. My opponent is born in 2009. That makes him 13 years old with 2,300. Like, let's just take a moment. At 13 years old, my opponent is 2,300 FIDE. And in Canada, there are less FIDE tournaments than regular federation tournaments, which is crazy. Rook ac1 is played. I want to activate my rook on these open files. The only way I can concretize the advantage of my rook on this bishop is by making my rooks really active along the open files that I get. So rook ac1, queen d8, a good move, folding down the queen and creating a battery, threatening bishop g5, which is, giving some counterplay. And now I have a misjudgment. You see, I want to trade pieces off the board. That is one of my core missions to win this game. So I want to play bishop d3 very, very desperately. And I do. I play bishop d3, which forces a trade of bishops. Only this is not good for reasons in the game. I should have played knight e3, attacking this bishop first, and giving my opponent the option to pin me, because now I have the tactic f4. I mean, it's really crazy. Now I'm blocking the bishop's trajectory, and on bishop takes, rook takes, e takes, knight takes f5. And here I'm up a piece. And if you take with the pawn, then I'm just going to win the bishop. So this is winning. And you can't play bishop g5, which means you have to play bishop g6 and now bishop d3. And this is different than in the game, because in the game I go bishop d3, bishop g5, knight e3. But now it's black's turn, and black can go queen b6, attacking my knight. I have to defend. And now e4, an outstanding positional move to open up the e5 square. Takes, bishop g6, and then the knight is going to come here. And if I take here, bishop takes, pawn takes, and then knight here to go to g4, grasping onto this pin, it's just too stressful to play this out. So my opponent didn't go with queen b6, which I was totally expecting. A 2300 has to go with queen b6, attacking the weakness and pinning the weakness. but my opponent goes with the trade here, which just saves me entirely. Because now less pieces are on the board, black can formulate less good counterplay. e4 is now played, and we saw this idea in the last variation. It's a very convincing idea, and I looked through it, and on this knight here, you know, if I do like queen here, if I just go back, there's knight g4 and things like this. But here it's winning for white after queen e2, queen b6, and now rook ce1. Getting the rook out of this pin is very, very important, so that now there's no knight g4 at all. I could just take the knight. And here I'm completely winning. I missed taking on e4 and instead centralized my queen on d4. E takes f3, rook takes, and now rook e8, threatening my knight. I double my rooks on this f-file that is now targeting this weak f7 pawn. And now on knight e5, I have only one move to still be winning in this position. Can you find it? If I go with any move like rook f5, here black has the insane tactic knight c6, attacking my queen based on the fact that this pawn is pinned here on d5. And the discovered attack on this knight. So this knight and this queen are both attacked. Queen g4, and then I just lose a piece. So I have to continue defending my knight after knight e5 attacking my rook, with rook h3 defending this. g6, only move knight c4, attacking this knight, trying to trade pieces off the board. My opponent goes with knight c6, but now it's different. Now on knight c6, okay, my queen is attacked, but I can go queen c5, attacking this knight, and you have to move the knight. Unless you're my opponent who played bishop f6 here. I was sure that after moving the knight, let's say knight here, I have knight d6 and I'm winning a pawn, but after bishop f6, threatening this, I can't take this knight because of bishop d4 check, forking my queen and my king. Very interesting game. So after bishop f6, I have to be careful, but I have another move that's really, really strong. And that is the move queen d6, trying to trade pieces and leveraging the already threatened knight to make this trade happen. The queen has no real good squares to avoid the queen trade. Queen c8 and queen a8, it's not really that good. So bishop d4 check happens, king h1, and now knight e7, folding the knight and opening up the queen trade possibilities. Not so fast. Patience is extremely important when trying to convert something like this. If I trade queens now, my pawn will fall on d5 most likely. So I keep the queens on the board, and I play rook takes h4, because this knight that is newly on e7 blocks the queen from defending this rook. And if knight f5, trying to fork these pieces, I have queen takes, rook takes, and then rook takes f5, which was very proud to see. And now I'm taking the defender off of the defense of this bishop, and after pawn takes, I take the bishop with a piece up. So I was very happy to see this line, and this forces a bishop move, and now I have rook e4, and I'm completely crushing here, completely crushing. I'm threatening things like this. Here I thought of this completely crazy sacrifice, and if king takes, it does work. Queen e6 check, the king goes back, and knight d6 threatening checkmate. Insane, right? But on takes, the king doesn't have to take back, and knight f5 can be played, and now all my pieces are forked, and I have to take this. Rook takes, and then I have to sack my rook for an equal endgame. So I didn't want that. Instead, I go rook e4, and now bishop f8, and now rook takes f7 works. I looked at it now, but tried to figure out why it works. Try to pause the video and solve the problem. Flex your answer in the comments if you found it. Here, rook takes f7 works, but not the way that we saw it last time with queen e6. The king can go to g7 this time. If you go knight e5, you lose to queen takes d5, and this is what I saw during the game. Queen takes d5, and I was so scared, because the queen takes and defends the square on f7, and white has nothing, and is completely losing. Instead, white has to go with queen e6 still, but now knight d6. Here, you're also blocking the queen from taking on d5 while threatening queen f7 to not checkmate the king. Yes, you're checkmating the king because of rook h4 with mates, but you're also threatening to win a rook. It's like the rook is trapped. And here after knight f5, which was the defense of last time, queen f7 check, king here, it's not rook h4 at all because there's two pieces on that square. It's really just rook takes e8. And here I could have lights out my opponent. But I played rook fe1, the second best move, and this really targets a simple weakness. I have 11 minutes on the clock. I should have found rook takes f7, but on rook e1, white is in total control of this game. If you take my queen, I take back, I fork these two pieces, and the rook defends the pawn, but then I just, take here, and I'm very, very comfortably up a piece here. And this is really good for the white pieces. So after rook fe1, my opponent goes with b5, attacking my knight, forcing the queen trades, but again, I don't want this. Oh, I could actually go knight b6. I missed that during the game, but okay. After rook fe1, b5, I was like, I can trade queens and go into a dubious endgame, still completely winning, but still. Or I could look for better. And I look, and I look, and I find. Here, white has the romantic queen c5, sacrificing the knight to clear the space on d6, so that if you take, I have d6, ramming through this knight here. And if you play any queen move, securing this rook, I just take on e7. This pawn is an absolute menace to society, quite similar to the pawn I had last game and last recap. And here, it's just completely over for the black pieces. A deep engine will give +7 to the white pieces. My opponent played queen b8. My opponent actually was playing queen d7, had the move on the board, but then went queen b8. Interesting. Queen b8, white to play and win, try to find the win. It's like a new move that I haven't seen every time, and it's a new tactic every time. It's a lot. It's very, very interesting, but it's a lot for my brain, who's just like trying to navigate the new tactic that arises on the board. Here, the simple knight b6 is lights out because of d6. I missed this. I played d6 instead, my normal plan, and after rook c8, white to play and win. Again, in this position, white to play and win. You have 2 minutes on the clock, just like I did. Let's make it fair. Pause the video, have 2 minutes on your clock, set a timer, white to play and win. Now that you've paused, now that you've solved it, the solution is d takes e7, and if rook takes, it's b takes c5, bishop takes, rook takes e7, threatening the fork, the queen moves out, and now we can save our knight who's been attacked 25,000 times with knight e5, and we have enough material to completely win. That is the best way to continue. Finding that with 2 minutes on the clock, it's another story. Here, I just opt to liquidate completely and gain more time on my clock and just get a favorable endgame. So I play queen b6. After knight d5, I trade queens. I go d7, sacking my knight. A little bit better than this was rook e8, which I saw, but I didn't love. Because after rook takes, my pawn is just streaming down the board. I saw knight f6, and I saw that black is winning my knight, and this is not good. But in fact, I have knight e3 here, sacking my rook, and after knight takes, I have d7. Okay, this judgment is crazy to make when you have a minute on the clock. So instead of rook e8, I played d7, and after knight here, if you take, I still have rook e8, and that now it's very, very winning. So after d7, knight here, knight b6 is completely winning. But I just trade. I'm here for trades. Rook e8, knight takes, and we just trade down to an endgame. And here I can trade knights, and this is winning for white. After rook takes c5, I am giving this pawn, but I saw that I can regain a pawn. So after bishop takes b4, I have rook check, king moves, and now rook a8 attacking this. The pawn has to move up, and now rook b8 winning this pawn on b5. This endgame becomes extremely interesting after I win this pawn. I go g3 first, I'm still going to win the pawn, and now I take. And here it's hard actually to win. I found myself kind of regretting that I didn't look for 30 seconds more for a winning combination. So here, my plan is to get my king out in the center. So after king g5, king g2, bishop moves, a4. Apparently a3 is completely winning here. I don't know how or why, but okay. I went with a4 to defend my rook in case this king was coming along, and to cut the king from passing the 5th rank. So king h5, I go king f3, king back, and now I go h3. Very important move. Here, my goal is to trade all of these pawns off and to restrain the king to the latter 2 files of this section of the board so I can sack my rook on a5 against the bishop and a pawn and win the pawn endgame. That's the plan. So h3, king h5, I go g4 check, forcing the king to g5, and now I go h4 check. And the idea is that if you go king takes, I go takes, takes, and rook takes, and your king here is completely contained. So black has to play a bishop move. It's the only possible thing to not play checkmate, right? So bishop moves, and now my plan, oh, I can even go like this. So my plan is to go king e4 and just rush the board here, bring a rook here, and I calculated that this is very easy. The king stays very far, and I win this endgame easily. So after takes, my opponent goes g5. And this is like a little hiccup, but at the same time, now I have a pawn to play with, and I can overload this bishop off these two squares. So I go with f6, bishop takes, and now I take on a5. And now I have a passed a pawn and a rook. It's a lot. King h3. I go with rook a6. Behind the bishop lies checkmate, so check is forced. King f4. Only move to stay around this pawn to force the king off the defense of this g4 pawn. The bishop moves. And now I go with a beautiful, I mean, just like, it's elegant. It's a zugzwang. So it forces bad moves out of my opponent. Rook h6. And here, this bishop is in a zugzwang. The king is in a zugzwang as well. The bishop is pinned. The king can't move because I take the bishop for free. So g3 is the only move. And now I have king g3. Again, only move is a pawn move, forcing that. And now I can sack my rook, take the pawn, and the king is too far away to catch up to my h-pawn. And after a few moves and, okay, too many moves played, but let's say, yeah, my opponent played till the end, but I checkmated my opponent. And 2309 is the best rating I have defeated since getting back into chess in August 2023. Thanks for watching, and see you in recap number 6.